Right. So what I'd like to do is just talk about my experience in terms of going from being an intern with my sponsoring company to joining my sponsoring company. And I also want to talk about the first 3 years after graduation, because a lot of things happen that probably will shock all of you. And since we're all inroaders and friends, I'm going to tell you some things that I haven't told anybody about what I went through. Because if you look at my experience on paper, I was an intern, Allergan's first intern, graduated, gave me a full-time offer to work in Los Angeles. I was promoted 3 years later to manager of sales training for the United States, had a chance to train the entire sales force, went over to Europe and trained the entire sales force in Europe. Then I was promoted to product manager with Allergan. I was responsible for a $250 million product, myself and this other person on my team. Had a lot of success there, brought in $64 million in additional revenue for the company, had a great experience. Then I was promoted again to manager for Southern California and Hawaii, and I took over a territory that was ranked number 21 in the country out of 22, and we're now number 4 in the country after the first year. So when you look at that, you go, wow, a lot of things, that's fantastic. I don't say that to brag about myself, because I say it because I really want to share with you, even though all those successes are there, I want to share with you the mindset I had that allowed me to do so well. And the main thing that I will take credit for above anything else is the fact that I listened to people that tried to tell me things. I wasn't very smart, I didn't have the most talent, but I was smart enough to listen to people that told me things and helped me to get to places that I wanted to go faster. So I really encourage you to listen to what I'm about to say and take the things out of it that really can benefit you, and the things that aren't quite a fit, that's okay as well. So how does that sound? Good? Okay. So let me start by saying, when I first graduated, I had a chance to work for 4 different companies. Obviously, Allergan was a company that sponsored me, had loyalty to them, but I felt like I owed it to myself to interview with other companies to see what was out there. So I did that interview with Lotus Elevator, Intel at one point. Other companies recruited me because I was sitting by the president of Whittier, and I had 4 job offers on the table by the end of the fall semester of my senior year. Big decisions to make. And after I went through the process of thinking, okay, what do I need to get into after I graduate? What's going to be the best place for me to be to position me for long-term success? And after a lot of soul searching, I thought, you know what? Allergan has taken care of me. I had a great experience with Allergan. I had a lot of mentors, I had a lot of support, and it just became a natural thing for me to take on a position with Allergan. So I know all of you will be facing decisions like that. Just really think about what's going to be the best place for you to be after graduation to get the right foundation for your long-term success. But here's a caveat. When my manager approached me and said, there's a job open in Southern California, sales position, I'd like you to work for me. I said, okay, it sounds great. He said, well, the territory is ranked last in the country. I said, okay. He's like, and Jamar, tell you what, the territory is ranked last, it's always been ranked last. I don't expect any sales numbers out of you. All I expect you to do is come in, work, learn how to sell, and then I'll move you to a different sales territory where you can make a lot of money. Now, coming in making pretty good money without any accountability for the sales numbers sounded pretty good. But being the innermost person that I was, I told my boss, I looked him dead in the eye, I said, look, I will be the #1 salesperson at Allergan in this territory in 1 year. He said, no you won't. I said, yes I will. He said, no you won't. And this went on like Agassi versus Sanford's tennis match for about a good 10 minutes. Finally I said, look, well, tell me why I cannot be the #1 salesperson in this territory. He said, for 2 reasons. Number 1, the territory has always been last, it will always be last. And number 2, you are not patient. Even if you were in a territory where you could be #1, you wouldn't do it because you aren't patient enough to learn and to understand that you have to know how to do the job before you can say you can be #1. Well, this was prior to my listening days, and in my mind I was like, well, I was like, whatever. I was like, I'll show him, I will be #1. So this was May of '95. So I went out for the back half of that year, and then when the yearly numbers came in January of '96, after 6 months being in the territory, guess where I was ranked? Last place. But I thought to myself, you know what? That's all right. I was sitting body president, Inroads alum, Dean's list, all that kind of stuff. If I can't do it, Nobody came. No big deal. So I worked hard. I went out and I busted it every single day. No one worked harder than me. No one did more dinner programs. No one entertained more customers than I did. No one knew the product better than I did. And I went on through that entire year, busting it and working my butt off. And we got numbers every single month. And every month it showed that my sales numbers were still at the bottom. But I had this 1 ounce of hope somewhere in my mind that by some miracle, I was going to be number one. So the year went by, and then in January of 1997, the sales numbers came out. I get a call from my boss. Phone rings, pick it up. Jamar just want to let you know that the sales numbers came in, and I knew he was going to tell me that I was the number one salesperson, so I was pretty excited. He said, well, you know what? You worked very hard. No one worked harder than you. No one made more sales calls. No one saw more customers. But you are in last place. I said, well, the ego kicked in. I said, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you go back to your sources? And this is honest to God truth. Go back to your sources, because I think the numbers are wrong. There's no way that I could work that hard and end up in last place. He said, okay? He was a very nice guy. Is it okay? I'll call you back. So 30 minutes later, he calls me back, the phone rings, I'm expecting him to say, you know, that was his major mistake, and you know what, you're number one. And guess what he said? You're last. So, I got dressed that morning and I drove to Denny's to have breakfast. I get to Denny's. You're happy for Denny's? I like Denny's. You like Denny's? Grass Lane. So I'm at Denny's, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I failed at something. And I sat at Denny's for 6 hours. 6 hours at Denny's. And to make it even worse, I had told all my friends, my family, everyone around me that I was going to be the number one salesperson. Here I was sitting at last. How can I face anybody? I was devastated. Now, to make matters worse, I get a new boss. So this new boss comes on board, and he's pretty much a no-nonsense type of person. First meeting with him, this was like about a month after this Denny's incident. He says, Jamar, I'd like to talk to you. It's like, no, I see that based on your sales numbers, you've been working really hard, you know, you're making more sales calls than anybody else, you know your stuff. He's like, but you're in last place. He's like, why do you think that is? Ego kicked in again. I said, well, it's because the sales territory sucks. I was told it has always been in last place, always been in last place, and guess what? It is in last place, so there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm ready to get transferred to a different territory. He said, well, tell you what, it's like, I don't think that's the case at all. He's like, I think that you were burned out. I think that you are not fit for this position. I think that you should look for other opportunities. And I said, after me arguing, obviously, I kind of got heated at that point, but I said, well, you're telling me that it's me and not the territory? He said, yes. He said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put you on verbal warning, which means that if your sales numbers don't get any better, we're going to fire you. Now, here I am in my mind thinking, I was an intern. Dean's list, play sports, MVP, all that kind of stuff. And I'm about to get fired? What the hell is this? Couldn't believe it, but... So, now, here's what I did next. So, you know what? Since Allergan doesn't want me, and this boss obviously doesn't like me, doesn't appreciate me, what I can do, I'm going to leave this position. I'm going to leave this industry. So, I had interest in owning a restaurant. So I started interviewing restaurant owners. This is a true story. I went to the Tony Roma's in Inglewood, met with the restaurant owner, sat down with him, talked about how to open a business, a restaurant, how to run it, realized that wasn't for me. Next, I looked into becoming a television talk show host, and I actually started my own public access television show in the city of Torrance. Now, keep in mind, I'm working, well, kind of working, and doing this on the side. So I start producing this public access television show, having a great time, realized, you know, it's really not for me. My heart isn't in it.